Our guest today is Chris, a former nurse of 31 years and now an award-winning crime writer who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis after what he describes as a torturous 19-year journey to answers. In this conversation, Chris takes us back to those first strange symptoms, the years of pushing through, continuing to work in healthcare, and the frustration of navigating a medical system that didn't always have the answers or believe what he was telling them. We also explore the pivot his life took, from nursing into writing, and how his lived experience of chronic illness found its way into crime fiction in a way few stories do. This is a thoughtful conversation about delayed diagnosis, identity, frustration, adapting to life with MS, and building a completely different chapter than the one you expected.
Chris, welcome to the podcast, But You Look So Good. We're so excited to have you. You're a crime writer. And I was saying before you got on here, I am a crime consumer, a crime book consumer from way back. So we're really interested to hear about your journey, the lead up to you being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Great to be here. Nice to meet you. So I had like a really ridiculously long route to diagnosis that was quite torturous. I think I must have been about 30. It was about the year 2001. And I started to get this like numbness in my left hand and this strange sensation that always made me seem really weird when I went to the doctors because I felt like someone was holding my hand. And it was like as if they'd got their hand around my wrist and the same around my left ankle. And it was like just really odd. And I thought, well, that's a really weird thing. Maybe I pinched a nerve or something. And I went to see the GP who referred me to a neurologist, and the neurologist said, we need to exclude things. And he said, we need to exclude multiple sclerosis. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was a nurse working in a busy acute hospital on a general ward at the time. I think I was just about to move to oncology. And the only people I'd ever seen with multiple sclerosis were like people who were really quite sort of severely disabled, people who were wheelchair users maybe, or who, were being admitted to hospital with complications from advanced multiple sclerosis to do with bed rest. So it was like, kind of felt like the floor had come from under me. It was a real shock. So he sent me for an MRI scan, a load of blood tests, and then next thing I just get a letter through the post that just says everything was negative, you discharged. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was really, really tired, like sleeping all the time. Just felt really kind of just generally not myself. And I was kind of struggling to get through. Kind of obviously being a nurse is quite a busy job, and I'd got a relationship, that kind of stuff. Anyway, so all kind of
Chris, did you still have? I'm interrupting.
Yeah,
but
no,
did you
'cause I
still
talked
have?
to-
Did you still have the numbness or the strange sensation in a hand and a foot? And they said you're good. We're just
Yeah, I
charging
did,
you,
and
right?
I did, and it just carried on, kind of, and it would go. It was sort of sometimes it wasn't there, but sometimes it was. And I'd suffered from migraines as a teenager, and I used to get quite a lot of strange sensations with migraines as part of an aura. So I kind of thought, well, this is just migraine. It's something like that. Um, and anyway, things kind of settled, and it would come and go, and I would get it occasionally, and I'd just be like, "Oh, I've got the thing," and I used to call it the ghost because. So I'd say to my partner, "I've got the ghost again," and kind of, and I'd be really weary, and kind of these
That
things would
is
happen.
wow. How
Um,
long were you calling it the ghost for?
oh, I still call it that.
You still call it the ghost?
Oh my
The
God. Well,
ghost.
it's kind of chilling actually. When you said
It
it felt
is.
like somebody had their hand around your
Yeah.
wrist. And then when you said, and one around my
Yeah,
foot, that's exactly
Yes.
where I thought, like I thought of two hands
Like,
holding.
yeah.
That's a bit spooky.
yes, it is spooky.
Okay.
This is
Oh,
the spooky crime writer in me, isn't it?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and then and it kind of carried on, and then about 4 years later, I went to bed and I had this terrible pain in my left eye. Woke up in the morning, went out into the garden, and I thought, I can't see properly. And I kind of closed one eye. And then it was only then I realized I was actually almost blind in one eye. And I couldn't see anything, just the peripheral vision. And it was like a grey disc, like an opaque disc. So I ended up in the hospital, and they diagnosed me with a thing called optic neuritis, which is a swollen optic nerve, which is often a presenting symptom that people have when they've got MS. And I saw this ludicrous doctor. He was
oh,
kind of like a private school boy, kind of like
oh.
really like pink shirt and kind of all that. And he was really like, and he just looked at me and he's like, "Oh, Mr. Bridges," he said, "Are you the kind of person who likes to know bad things?" And I was like, "Yes." Like, as soon as you've said that, I'm not going to say like, "Oh no, just no,
No,
no, it's
thanks.
not
Yeah.
bother."
No, not
Yeah.
for me.
Oh,
Yeah, you keep your little secret to yourself.
yeah.
And he said, "Oh, 50% of people who get this have got multiple sclerosis," he said, which I'm not sure that that's even the accurate
No.
stats now, but that's what he said at the
Mm.
time. And I was like, "Oh, shit." I was like, "This so sorry, I shouldn't be swearing,
No,
should
go
I?"
No,
ahead.
you're
And I
allowed
was
to
Fine.
like,
swear,
Okay,
please.
okay." And then I was like, "Oh God, this is not good. This is really bad. This is really bad." And I went into this spiral. And he said, "You need an MRI to exclude that you've got MS." He said, "But unfortunately, the waiting time for an MRI at the moment is a year." And I was like, "What the hell?"
Oh,
So I was like, "This is ludicrous." And I was like, "I've got to just sit with this for a year. How am I going to do this? My anxiety and kind of how I feel. Will my eyesight come back?"
Yes.
So my eyesight came back, which took about a month. We went on holiday
wow.
to Spain, and I kind of joked at the time. I was like, "Oh, I saw half of Spain because I've
Yeah.
got like one
It's one eye.
My
but
goodness.
it was the most bizarre experience. And I even went to work, and I was kind of like, when I was doing like giving like medications and things, I just used to have to squint a bit, kind of to look, because I was like, I can't just not
Wow.
work. Um, but anyway, I went to the clinic and I saw a doctor, and she was this really lovely senior doctor, and she said to me, "Look," and I told her how bad I was feeling, how worried I was, and she
Mm.
said, "You know, what you've got to think," and she completely nailed it. I don't know how she was so perceptive. She should have like maybe done some psychology or something, but she said,
Yep.
um, I imagine that as a nurse, you've probably seen the worst of sort of cases with people with multiple sclerosis, because you don't see people who are well, who are walking around the streets, who are not in a
Mm.
hospital. And she
Yes.
said, what you've got to remember is that MS is a spectrum illness. And it was like, oh my God, those words are magic.
Yes.
Um, and it just made total
Mm.
sense to me. And I was like, yeah, I can accept that maybe there's a spectrum illness.
Mm.
Anyway, so eventually I had the MRI, and it took about 9 months. And the same thing happened. I got a letter that just said the MRI is clear, you're discharged. And I was like, oh, okay. I really expected it to be MS. And then, so a couple
I
of years,
imagine, Chris, you'd almost started to sort of resolve, like you were in your mind, you
yeah,
were like,
yeah,
okay, this is my diagnosis now. I'm going to have
yeah,
MS and then I'm going to move forward. And then you
And that
get that
yeah,
lovely
letter.
doctor basically confirmed that, like not
Yes.
confirmed it, but said, if it is
yeah,
MS,
yeah,
remember it's a spectrum illness. What a great
Yes.
phrase.
yeah.
Yes.
I
So
know,
yeah, that
isn't
would
it?
have helped you kind of, okay, adapt to that knowledge that
I
wasn't.
know. I still use the spectrum illness thing as a
Mm,
mantra as well now.
mm, mm.
Um, so a few years later, all the same stuff happened again, and it was a little bit further up my arm, and my middle finger was numb, and it was all kind of oddness. And so I went back to saw a neurologist again, had another MRI again, same thing a couple of years later, and it just kept going on and on and on. And then eventually, 19 years after the first incident,
Wow. That's
I
wow.
I Oh, let me just do what I missed one, a good one. So
Yeah.
I went to see a doctor about 4 years before I was diagnosed, and a neurologist, and he said, nothing. He was like a little Irish man. He was really cute, and he was wearing a three-piece suit with a bow tie. And he was really
Oh,
old-fashioned, and he didn't say a thing.
delightful.
And
Oh,
he just said, "You need an MRI scan." I was like, "Okay, well, I've been, this is the
Yeah.
carousel, whatever. You
mhm.
won't find anything, la la la." And then I don't know if they do this with you, but in the UK, they often send a copy of the clinic letter to your house.
Right.
And so I went to pick up the mail, and I opened the envelope, and it was a letter, and it was a copy of the letter he'd sent to my GP.
Yep.
So for like governance reasons and whatever. So I opened the letter, and it said like, "Dear Doctor such and such, this 30 whatever year old man came to see me. I am 100% certain this will be multiple sclerosis." I was like, "Okay, thanks for telling
Whoa.
me that."
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
but there was a little part of me that thought, "Yeah, whatever, it won't be.
Right.
This is again and again."
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, about when was it? 2019, Christmas Day. I was watching an Agatha Christie on television on the
Yeah.
BBC, and I
Okay.
was sitting like quite happily, and I sort of noticed that my foot had gone numb, and I was like, oh, like rubbing my foot, and then eventually, to cut a long story short, over the next few days, it spread and
Mm.
went up to my rib cage, and the whole of my left foot and leg was kind of numb. I could still walk on it, so I
Yeah.
carried on going to work.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I
nothing
was
really stopped you when
working
it
as
came to
I
continuing to
know,
work, did it?
yeah, work ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a palliative care nurse in the hospital at the
Oh,
time,
right.
um, and eventually I just thought, this is silly. I've got to go to A&E, and I thought I've probably pulled a muscle in my back or like
Oh,
trapped a nerve in my
wow.
back, because I've obviously being an older nurse, I've got a bit of a creaky back, like lots of us
Yeah.
have from
Yeah.
lots of manual handling over the years and
Hmm.
things.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
I went to A&E. and that's when I was diagnosed with MS. And they saw that I'd got lesions on my spine, and then they sent me for an MRI of my brain. And this process took a couple of weeks. They were fairly quick, actually. And I'd got several lesions in my brain and a few on my spine, and it was a complete shock. I was absolutely
Wow.
staggered. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Really? I was like, I
Wow.
can't believe this. I mean, after 19 years of being told all the time. So the
Yes.
theory now from my consultant is that what happened was that I was having small MS relapses, and that I'd probably got quite an indolent kind of lazy MS that wasn't hugely active. But I
Right.
was getting these little relapses, and the relapses were causing tiny brain lesions, but they were either too small to be seen on the scan,
Mm.
Yeah.
plus the fact that every single time I had a scan was always done non-urgently, which is fine.
Yes.
That was right. That was reasonable. And they were often done like 3, 6, 9 months after the attack. So the
Mm.
swelling had gone down.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and they
just not
didn't see
detectable.
Had to
them.
see it.
And
Yeah.
they probably could have found it. Had they done a lumbar puncture and like done
Oh,
a spinal tap and took some fluid off, they would have seen the signs of MS there and would have
yes.
Yes.
diagnosed it.
Yep.
But there's kind of two strands to it. So if they had diagnosed me, there wasn't actually any treatment they would have given me. So there was nothing. So
Right.
that would have been, I think if I look at it as from a medical point of view, from being a nurse and being clinical, I'd say the risk of having a lumbar puncture and the side
Yeah.
effects of that, which are awful, some
Mm.
or can be for some people, not everyone. Don't worry if you've got to have one, it might be fine. Um, but
But
yeah,
there are
for me, it gave me
risks. Yeah.
horrible headaches, and yeah, and
Yeah.
there's risk of
Yeah.
infection,
Yeah. Yeah.
meningitis, those kind of things, that can
Yes.
happen.
Yep.
So, and if there's no actual treatment that they would have done, then they're kind of you're doing a test for no reason. So
Mm.
I kind of feel like I don't feel like I missed out on any treatment, but I think what I did miss out on was validation
Yeah.
Right.
and ability to come to terms with things. But
Mm.
conversely, I also think what I didn't miss out on was having a kind of sword of Damocles hanging over me, because for me, the minute I got the actual diagnosis, I've sort of had this constant feeling that things could always get worse. Kind of,
Right.
there may be a big attack that kind of affects
Mm.
me quite systemically.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
it's a difficult one. So I don't feel bitter about it. I mean, I was treated a little bit badly at times by general practitioners and people. They were quite dismissive.
Mm.
One GP once told me that he thought it was about time they named a special little syndrome just for me because of my weird symptoms. And I was like, okay, yeah,
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
thanks.
I
What a
know.
strange thing to say.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he intended it as a joke, but it wasn't very funny, and it
No,
was
it's
quite
not funny.
upsetting.
No, not
And I
Yeah.
think,
funny.
the understanding as well, like within like family, my partner,
Yeah.
my partner tried very hard to understand, but
Yep.
Mm.
there wasn't anything to understand.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
was just be like, oh, I'm having one of those weeks where I'm just so tired that I can't do anything, and
Yep.
like all I can manage is to go to work, come home, sleep on
Yeah.
the sofa, go to bed, kind of that's it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
obviously, in retrospect, it was sort of the MS for flaring and kind of things that
Yes.
were happening
Yes.
there.
And yeah, you weren't
Um,
able to say to him, here's a brochure on MS fatigue, or here's a
Mm.
yeah,
website to go and have a
exactly.
look at the
Exactly.
studies and the
Yeah.
Yeah,
evidence about why I'm
and I,
going through this.
and I kind of, I think they probably thought I'd got a functional neurological disorder, but didn't
Mm.
ever tell me that or name that as well. Because I
Yes.
think they were,
Mm.
I mean, I'm not sure we're in enlightened times now, but they were even
Yeah.
less enlightened
Oh,
times in
Yes.
regards to
absolutely.
Correct.
functional
Yes.
neurological disorder.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah, it's an interesting journey. And then so I was
Yeah.
diagnosed and I was put on treatment. So I'm now on a treatment to prevent me having what help hopefully prevent me having further attacks. The B cell
Yes.
depleting drugs, and kind of on regular surveillance and that kind of thing. And it's
Right.
been so helpful to kind of actually, I think just the fact of being on a treatment kind of is a psychological thing as well.
Yes.
It kind of,
Yes.
yeah. And to
Yes.
be able to talk to other people who've got MS and those kind of
Yeah.
things as well,
Yeah.
to get
Yes.
that
Absolutely.
there as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
helpful. There are so many helpful things to a diagnosis. Chris,
Mm.
it's
Hmm.
amazing because if we had have spoken to you and you said, oh, my diagnosis journey began in the 80s, I would have
Yeah.
thought, oh, yeah, sometimes 19 years to diagnosis, is not that uncommon
Yeah. Yeah.
back then. But the fact that your journey started in 2001,
Mm.
it
Yeah.
is amazing to me that it's taken 19 years in this day and age.
Yes.
I
But
think
I think,
I had a bit of a dichotomy of how I felt about it, or sort of
mm,
a dual strand of how I felt about it. So before I
mm,
was diagnosed, I can remember the time, I think it was 2009, when the doctors, I accidentally got, I got that letter where he'd
yeah,
very tactlessly put things he'd not spoken about. Um,
yes. He didn't speak
and
about anything.
He
to
didn't. I
you?
remember,
Yeah.
no, not at all. It was almost as being tapped with a tendon hammer and that kind of thing, and poked with
Wow.
pins and all of that.
Yeah, that was
Um,
it.
Oh,
and I can remember thinking to myself, I remember I decided to do some Googling and kind of, but I think being a nurse, I'm quite a sensible Googler. I'm quite good. I'm quite,
Yes.
Yes. I
You
like
yeah,
know
that.
I'm
A
when to
always
look.
like,
sensible. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
yeah, it's got to be a medical thing or something
Yes.
sort of like,
Yeah.
and it's got to
Yeah.
be evidence-based
Evidence-based.
kind of thing. But
Yeah,
anyway, I
that's
did
right.
look up,
Yeah.
and I remember reading about the kind of thing that you can get clinically isolated syndrome, where you get a single attack of MS,
Yeah.
because the evidence was quite strong in lots of ways. Because I'd got some nerve stripping, the demyelination on my eye from when I had the
Right.
blindness episode, so they
Yep.
did actually see it. But then
Right.
because they didn't see the lesions on the MRI, they were like, oh well, that's not enough evidence to say you've got MS. So I kind of in my head,
Mm.
there was like probably 50% thought, no, I've not got MS. And then I think 50% of me thought, I've got a query MS diagnosis. It's
Yeah.
just hanging
Mm.
over me and just keeps going. But the funny thing was that when I was actually diagnosed, it was like a complete shock. It was like,
Yeah.
I'd had no warning at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas actually I'd had 19 years worth of warning. But
Yeah.
it's a
Yes.
strange
Wow.
psychological mechanism, isn't it? But
So many
Yes.
people listening, Chris, I think would be able to relate to that
Yeah.
feeling
yeah,
of, even for example, and I know, you're a little bit further away from diagnosis now, but that shock that people feel where there's a second relapse or when you get a new symptom
yeah,
or where something
yeah,
changes,
Yes.
the shock can be almost just as prevalent as at the time of diagnosis. And
Yeah.
the
yeah,
people
yeah,
around you might be thinking, why are they having this emotional reaction? They knew they
yeah,
had MS.
totally.
Why is it
Yeah.
such a big deal? But yeah, a lot
And I
of people
think
would get it, what you're
I
talking
think
about.
a lot of people with MS, you kind of can get sort of progression of symptoms even without progression of the disease. So although you haven't got new lesions, sometimes the symptoms actually can get worse over time.
Mm.
Not
Yes.
always, not
Correct.
for
Yeah.
everybody, but for me it has. And I kind of ended up had a very kind of difficult psychological battle about whether to stop work, and that was a real big thing for me. It was
Of
absolutely huge
course.
because
Mm.
being a nurse was my identity, really.
Yes.
Um, it wasn't something I ever wanted to do. I always wanted to be a writer. Kind of, I was going to go
Oh,
to uni and do an English degree, and then I wanted to be a journalist, and then
wow.
had these lofty dreams of like writing a novel in the evenings and becoming like a Booker Prize winner or whatever. But
Yes.
Yes.
everything went, that kind of teenage kind of ideation that you have kind of, but
Mm.
it all went a bit wrong, and kind of I actually failed all my exams because I had this kind of mental health episodes as a
Oh,
teenager relating
right.
to kind of sexuality and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so I ended up actually working in a shop, and then I trained to be a nurse just by chance. Kind of, it was just a strange decision I made randomly, but one that I actually really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it became my identity because I think, when you've got a job like nursing, I think it's a very strong identity.
Yes.
And you kind of almost have to find out who you are, away from that. And I think
Mm.
I was lucky that I'd got the opportunity to retire, but in my early 50s. But it was a torturous process to do that as well, and kind of
Mm.
even going through all of that kind of added a bit to the psychological torment. Like, do I deserve this? Like, am I being
Mm.
lazy? Kind of,
Yeah,
could I not try a
absolutely.
bit harder? All those stupid thoughts that you have, when
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
the reality was that I was struggling at work so much that I was spending almost all of my downtime just incapacitated. And then it
Yes.
started to encroach into my work time, and I was taking time off, and I was having
Yeah.
to sometimes go and sit in the toilet in between patients and just sit
Oh,
on the floor with my back against the door and just kind of take 10
oh.
minutes and kind of, and I thought, this is just not working
So you were
anymore.
working really hard to continue to actually
Yeah, really hard.
and I think,
But
Chris, we see so many people who, when the choice is taken from them, it's
yeah,
you just lose agency. I'm interested, when you retired, is that when you started writing?
almost. So
Okay.
I'm really embarrassed about this because I don't like being called like inspo porn. It's really embarrassing.
Um,
Oh,
It's
we're
like the worst
all,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So that I'm also not very keen on the whole warrior thing, but that's another
mm,
story. But anyway, so
mm,
I'd always wanted to write, and then
mhm,
a whole like kind of medley of things happened, and kind of I got diagnosed with MS in 2020. COVID happened at the same time,
mm,
and the BBC radio asked for COVID stories. So they wanted people to write in with their stories about COVID to read on national radio. So I thought, oh,
mm,
that's a really interesting thing. So I thought,
mm,
well, my perspective is really different because I was a palliative care nurse. So
mm.
my job had kind of
Oh,
flipped a little bit. So it had gone from having a range of patients with different stages of illness, but all with terminal illnesses, but sort of all of our patients had COVID, and they were end stage COVID kind of that we were seeing, and it was all really different. But I kind of wanted to kind of calm the public a little bit and sort of say a thing like, this is what we're doing, and we're trying really hard, and we're trying to look after your relatives, even though you can't see them and you're not here. We're doing our best, and this is what it's like. Trying to dispel a bit of, because I think knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yeah.
And anyway, and they lapped it up. They absolutely lapped up what I'd
Mm.
written, and it kind of I'd written some stuff 10 years before and won some competitions, and I thought, oh my god, this is like the time then. Maybe I've just been diagnosed with MS. It could be now or never. So I'd just been diagnosed with MS, was just coming out of a relapse, was exhausted, was working with COVID, and then I used to get home in the evenings and write for an hour every night. And so I wrote a book all about a group of nurses and this crime, because I used to read a lot of crime fiction as a teenager, and I've always had an enduring love for crime fiction. Like I always like the psychological thrillers where it's kind of like the kind of tension based kind of things and suspense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that's what I'd like to write. So I wrote this book. I sent it off to some agents and got nothing back. So I sent it off to some more agents and more agents. And eventually, after about 50 agents, I got 2 replies. And they both said, we really like the way you write. We think it's great, but we just don't like the story that you've sent us, kind of, the idea. So I'd written a whole novel. So I was like,
Oh my
okay, well,
gosh.
this is actually overwhelmingly positive, was my view. I was like,
Mm.
somebody thinks I can write. Radio 4
Yes.
think I can write. They enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yep.
These 2 agents said I can write. So maybe if the story's not right, maybe I need to think of a different story. So I thought, well, what story can I tell? Obviously I know lots about nursing. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a story about illness. And I thought, who would want to read a story about my boring chronic illness that
Yeah.
just grinds me into the ground every day? It's so tedious. No one's going to want to read that. But maybe if I could flip the narrative and make a thriller about chronic illness, then that would work. So I thought to myself, would I be able to kill someone? And I thought, like, on a really good day, probably yes. But I just have to like plan it, like we plan a trip or something when
Oh,
you're
it's
ill. So
great.
like you've got to make sure you've got your energy levels right. So I was like, yeah, if I had to kill someone, I'd probably have to have a couple of days beforehand to to prep. Probably need a week afterwards at least. So yeah, but it's possible. So I came up with the idea of a young woman living in Southeast London, which is where I was living at the time. And I thought, so I decided to do it with an unspecified neurological illness where she hadn't got a diagnosis, right? What etc.
Exactly. Exactly.
Brilliant.
And I decided to extrapolate everything. So I thought, what would push me to want to kill someone so desperately that so the character in the book is presented with a plot to murder someone by someone that she meets and to be an accomplice. And I thought, what would make me desperate enough? So I thought, well, what if I didn't have money? I didn't have like the security of work or the security of like a pension backup for ill health. What if I didn't have adequate housing? What if I didn't have anyone around me who was empathetic? What if I'd lost everything through illness? So I went kind of down that route, and I was really nervous writing it, in part because I didn't want to let people down, and I kind of kept thinking, oh my god, I'm writing this book and I've got to represent the whole of everybody in society who's ill. Like,
No
not much
pressure?
pressure
No
there.
pressure.
No.
Yeah.
And I kept having to have a word with myself and say, like, look, Chris, you're representing your own experience and an
Yes.
imaginary
Brilliant.
experience that's kind of like drawn from that experience, kind of,
Yes.
like, so it's a bit of everything.
And just
So
one
yeah, so
character's experience, because the pressure to represent
exactly.
everybody is way too much. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I decided to. So anyway, I ended up. I got taken onto a program which was for writers from underrepresented groups in society, which was
Wonderful.
a London-based program, and it was for people from like the queer community or whichever terms you want to use, or from minority ethnic groups, or people from working class communities, or
Yep.
people from disabled or chronically ill communities. So
Yes.
I was like, I'm in. So I got taken
Yeah.
onto that, and
Fantastic.
it was like a 9-month program, and then at the end of that, I got an agent. And then we managed to sell the book to HarperCollins as well, which was amazing. Which was a real,
Wow.
Fantastic.
yeah. So it's kind of almost like, yeah. When the book came out, I had a really good publicist who got me some articles in tabloid newspapers writing about illness, which I thought was amazing. But I was really clear that like, do not put this like, is the equivalent of somebody who like gets loses a limb and then crawls up Everest or something. I
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
want that. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
I just happened
Yeah.
to
We
write a
can
book,
understand that.
and it was something there. It's
Yep.
it's an ideal job for someone who's chronically ill because you can kind of most writers only write for a few hours a day. So
Yes.
if that, a
Yeah,
lot
you
of
can
writers,
choose your time.
You can choose your time.
yeah,
You know, when you're talking about this, Chris, and you're saying you just get this diagnosis and then you're coming home from treatment and then you're writing,
yeah,
it's not hard to see why people jump to this. That's so
yeah, I suppose
inspirational.
so.
Like it's
Yeah.
real.
Agreed.
And Sally and I talk about this often. You know,
Yeah.
we're not about the inspiration, but we can
No.
see how
Yeah,
often it happens. And I love
Yeah.
that we're talking about it.
Just add, Chris, I just want to add that it just seems to me as though when you decided, right, this is what I'm going to write about, and that lovely moment where you think, I really am an expert in this area.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess as an author, which I would never in my wildest dreams think that I would ever really want to or
Who
could,
knows? Yeah,
but I imagine that to be able to just have that expertise within you from your lived experience as well as
yeah.
your professional career as a nurse, but it must just feel like, I don't know, like it's right. It must be the right
I think
thing.
one of the big things that they like to talk about in publishing is genuineness, being people being
Yes.
genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that, over the years, I'm sure it's the same everywhere. That there's been huge gaps in like media. So people who, from especially like Black people's experience, has not been
Yep.
represented in publishing. And if it has been represented,
Mm.
sometimes it's been represented by the wrong people.
Yep.
And I think and which I've nothing against anybody writing about an experience, a characteristic I have.
Yep.
It doesn't worry me, but as long as they do it properly and they're very
Yes.
cautious and careful.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, a word that was constantly used again and again in publishing about me was like that it was authentic and genuine.
Authentic.
Yes.
Yep.
And I actually think, well, that's fine, it's good.
It's
But yeah, it was just
wonderful. It's absolutely
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a strange thing. It's kind of
Could you accept that?
yeah,
Yeah.
I did,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, it is good to be able to write this. One of the most moving things for me was, so this is, oh gosh, this is such like sounds like a humble brag, doesn't it? But
That's
I
okay.
got shortlisted for a national award for debut crime fiction, a big
Wow.
Wow.
um,
Congratulations.
I don't know if you there's a place in England where when the crime writer Agatha Christie disappeared, she went
Oh,
missing and then she disappeared for a week and they thought she might have been murdered back in the 1920s or whenever. And she was found in this like little spa town of Harrogate. And so they have the crime festival there. And so I had to go up there and it's like hundreds and hundreds of crime fiction fans from all around the UK and all over the world go. And so there was a woman and she was kind of waiting in the queue. She was a wheelchair user and she came up and she'd got functional neurological disorder
mhm.
and she said that the book had made her feel really seen and she was like, obviously I'm not really a really angry murderer kind of but yeah, just to kind of
Glad she
because
clarified.
I always say to people, like, if I wrote this like 384-page book, which that's the length it is,
Yep.
about my daily experience, then who's going to want to read that?
Mm,
But if it's based around an actual story, so because I
Mm.
think actually, because I kind of looked into it out of interest, because I thought, why do people not write about chronic illness, or what is it
Mm.
that's wrong? And I kind of did some reading around it and thought it was a really interesting subject. And one of the things is that I think terminal illness or sort of end stage illnesses or progressive illnesses have got a story arc. So fiction needs a story arc. You need a beginning, a middle, and an end.
mhm.
And often, kind of the way the story starts is like there's an inciting instant where a thing happens, and then it sort of moves up towards the climax, and then it kind of goes back down towards the resolution. And I think you don't have that. So
Yes.
you would have that. The only way you would have that is if someone. Well, there's three ways. One would be like it's like a tragic love story where someone's got a terminal illness and the end point is the resolution is death.
Mhm.
And my life expectancy with MS is not that much different. It's only a few years different with modern treatments and kind of modern healthcare.
Yep.
So the other way would be that the person's cured, which is not going to happen. I've got
Mm.
irreversible like neurological damage. And the other one would be the favorite one where it's like, oh, surprise, someone's a fake. So,
Yes.
so those three. So they're the kind of three options open to ill people in fiction most of the time. And I
Yes.
thought about the reason for that is that chronic illness itself is just a series of constant story arcs. So I'm constantly
Yes.
like last week I had a week where I felt really well and I was actually much more active. And then I was kind of like, oh, I don't think I'm even ill anymore. And then kind of all of a sudden it's back again and kind of, and
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
constant, like round
Yep.
and around.
Yep.
So I
Yes.
thought, well, I want to make it. I wanted it to be a feature of the book that the main character Emma had got this constant sort of battle within the
Yes.
story. So although the story was doing the thing with the crime, there was like the
Yes.
inciting
Mm.
incident, the climax where the crime happened. The other
Yeah.
stuff was going off for her constantly throughout it
Mm.
as well. So she was having
Mm.
fatigue and pain and kind of numbness and all those things that were causing difficulties for her. Um, so yeah, it was yeah, it's
It's
just
wonderful to have really a character with a chronic health condition portrayed so accurately
Mm.
and not
yeah,
the kind of glossy Hollywood version. You know, where often we can kind of be sucked in or drawn into a story. Oh, this person has MS or they have a chronic illness that's the
Yes.
same name as mine. Oh,
yeah,
great. And yeah, oh, I experienced that. I experienced, oh, yeah, no, now it's just the Hollywood version. Like,
yeah.
you know, they're not giving the
Yeah.
ups and downs or they're making
Yes.
it some big dramatic ending when it's not. So it's
That
really
Yes.
great that you can
It's
That
put
was a
that in.
it was one of the reasons I wrote the book in a way, because when
Mm,
I throughout my life, I've always been a really big reader, and I used to read a lot in childhood and as a teenager. And
mm,
I often found that I don't really enjoy reading nonfiction very much, although occasionally. But on the whole, I like fiction, and I find fiction a real comfort, and films as well, or television, and especially if something bad's happening. And I can remember
mm,
I had an episode of stress burnout when I was working as a ward manager on a really busy ward, and I was really unwell with it. And I was just completely burnt out, and I was just felt
mm.
broken, and I was off work for months. And I think one of the things that really kind of helped me was a fiction book by Marion Keyes. I don't know if the Irish,
Yeah,
yeah, so
we know
or the
Marianne Keys.
yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
yeah.
So yes, it was a book by her, and one of the characters had depression, and it really helped. And it just was the fact
Mm.
it was fiction for me was
Yes.
there, and other
Yes.
things like relationship breakdowns, just sort of family issues. You know,
Yes.
they're often this fiction that kind of helps me and kind of makes me feel seen, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm inside someone else's head, and it's
Yes.
relatable. But I
Yes.
just felt with illness that wasn't there. And although,
Mm.
kind of I got diagnosed and I just lay around listening to Lana Del Rey and feeling a bit
Mm.
sorry for myself and kind of stuff. And I was like, where are the books that are going to help me? Where are
Yeah.
they? And they're awesome. I mean,
Yes.
they're definitely awesome. I mean, I've read one since, but I kind
Yep.
of thought, like, where's the genre fiction that's
Yeah.
there? Um,
Mm.
Yes.
and is anybody going to take a punt? And it was a big worry, actually. I thought, will we ever pick up a publishers with this? Because
Mm.
will the
Mm.
publishers be too put off?
Mm.
Um, and we did get a lot of kickback when we first tried to sell the book. Uh,
Mm.
the main character is quite angry,
Mm.
so let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they were talking about this. But quite often they would say, "Oh, we don't find the character relatable or
Mm.
likable." And I thought, is that because she's ill? And I kind of kept having that recurring thought, and
Yes.
I
And
don't
it's
know.
fascinating because, you know, somebody that lives with a chronic illness can be quite angry. And so
Yeah,
is she relatable? Well, yeah, to people with chronic illness. She'll
totally,
be
Yeah.
really
totally.
relatable.
And I think as
Yeah,
well, like it's uncomfortable for people to read that, isn't it? Like it's,
Yeah.
publishers
yeah.
reading that going, it's not that,
Yeah,
it
we don't
doesn't
want
wrap up,
that.
but we want someone who's more likable. It's just, I mean,
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
is how people present. Not all the
and that's
time, but
I think
often.
yeah, I think one of the difficulties with illness, with chronic illness, is if you look well, and I think it's really hard, isn't it? Because I think, yeah, the crime festival I just mentioned. So
Yeah.
I'm quite, I think being an author nowadays, you've got to kind of be a bit on social media. But I am actually
Mm.
also a bit of a social media addict, which I need to
Mhm.
sort out. Um, but I think sometimes, when that's your only window on the world, and you've got no lens on the
Mm.
world, it's a way
Mm.
out, isn't it? And also a way to
Absolutely.
communicate with other people who are ill and with
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
but I present myself a lot on social media. I'm very candid as well. And I'll often put posts saying, this is a bad week this week. And I'm having, and kind of this is how I'm feeling. And kind of, and I always put at the end, the usual disclaimer: this is not a post for sympathy, a plea
Yeah.
for sympathy. This is just a solidarity post to say this is
Yeah.
how I'm feeling if other people are feeling it as well.
Mm.
Um, anyway, two people at the crime festival who were crime fiction readers, and I didn't mind them saying this. I wasn't offended in the slightest, but they said, "Oh, I expected you to look more ill," and I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Oh." There was a little moment where I just kind of thought, "Yeah, yeah, imposter syndrome," because I'm
Yeah.
kind of I'm quite big on imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I'm still waiting for someone to kind of realize I wasn't really a proper nurse, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's the same with like writing and
Only
all of
those
that stuff.
30 years you put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's proof. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one, isn't it?
It
And
is.
I've had a strange experience recently because been having the house renovated for like we're on week 11. We had a new
Oh,
bathroom put in and different stuff because we moved house last year to live by the coast. And I kind of don't normally have an external lens upon me, so kind of you don't kind of think about it. I just go about my day, kind of
Mm.
thing.
Yep.
And the builder comes in, and he's really friendly. He's absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And every day he'd say like, "Oh, what are you going to do today?" Kind of, and I was like, "What are you up to? What's the plan?" And I'm like, lying down,
Yeah.
a little bit of sleep, trying to ignore the burning pain in my legs, and those kind of things that
Yes.
so it's kind of a bit strange to have that external kind of
Yes, it
thing
is.
there,
Yes.
because I'm just not
Yes.
used to that. I'm used to it just being me and my partner and the dog,
Yes.
and kind of, nobody's,
No
he
one's
isn't judging.
questioning you?
Yeah, and he isn't really questioning me or judging me. I think
No.
that's down to me, that
Yeah.
I'm seeing myself through
Did
his
you
eyes.
did you feel compelled to explain or to share your
Yeah,
diagnosis with him?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
was
he
that
knew my
okay?
diagnosis
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Okay.
But
Yep.
the silly thing that I felt compelled to do was tell
Mm.
him how busy I used to be. So I'm like,
Yes.
oh yeah,
Oh.
6 years ago, I was living in London. I used to go to the theatre twice a week. I was working 40 hours a week as a nurse, and kind of,
Yeah.
you wouldn't believe
Yeah.
it. Kind of, it's like, oh,
Yes, you really had to
this is,
prove yourself.
yeah,
Yes.
this I am valid kind of thing, which is
Yes.
so
Yes.
Isn't it
silly. And
amazing?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know. And
But
I
it
know I
comes out
shouldn't
without
have to
thought.
do that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm.
Yep.
totally. And
Yep.
it's kind of a bit of a mantra for me. It's a strange
Mm.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the other thing sometimes I get like a brain fog and I have word finding difficulties, and that can be quite a strange thing as well.
Yeah.
But I look completely normal, kind of,
Yeah.
and you think
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, this is really, or when the fatigue hits me really badly and I'm kind of out. And my partner's really good and very understanding and really
Yep.
accommodating, but it's kind of like, he'll be like, oh, shall we go, let's walk a bit further, shall we go for another walk? And kind of like, actually. And it's kind of like, sometimes it's like, yeah, if I don't want to look ill, but it's kind of like,
Yeah.
there's also,
Yes.
yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it?
Yes. There's more of
Absolutely.
an onus on you to have to use your words and communicate
Yeah.
rather
Yeah,
than somebody saying, oh, he's just obviously not feeling well today.
Yeah. There's
And
just more
yeah.
of
getting
an
that
ease
cue.
and
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
understanding of others when it's congruent the way you look and the way you feel. But
Yeah.
And one of my friends commented, because I had a sort of bad a run of kind of like on and off flares, where I was almost constantly going in and out of flares all the time, and I
Mm.
was really struggling with fatigue. And but I managed to have a better day, and I went out and had a short walk just along the seafront with a friend and our dogs. And she said, "Oh, I've noticed that you're limping," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I am." And I was like, I am ill. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't actually feel my left foot properly, but I'm
Yes.
usually trying really hard to hide it. And it's a
Yeah.
strange thing, isn't it? Because I kind of want to appear well,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a difficult one.
Was it kind of validating that she said that in that moment, or was it more kind of a shock of, oh, I didn't realize I wasn't masking today?
Yeah, I think I did realise as well, so it kind of wasn't a shock, and I
Mm.
kind of felt okay about it, and
Mm.
it was a bit validating actually,
Mm.
because I think it's kind of awkward, isn't it? Because you sort of feel like people can almost forget that you're ill if you mask too well,
Mm.
and there's also that fact that the old trope of kind of like, you don't think I'm ill because you never see me when I am ill, which is very true of me, because when
Mm.
I'm ill, I'm alone at home. There's just
Yeah.
me, kind of,
Mm.
and maybe my
Yeah.
partner here as well. And
Yeah.
I'll be too ill to leave the house or do anything. So I kind
Yeah.
of, there's no presentation of me anywhere.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it? And kind of,
It's yeah.
and I think to finish work at an age when I wasn't expecting to as well,
Mhm.
Yep.
and then to be sort of being paid a pension for being ill, and you kind of almost, you think, are people judging me? Are they thinking
Yeah.
this? And then
Mm.
you get little things you think, oh my God, people think, oh well, he's written a book, kind of, you must have
Yeah.
some kind of, you must be well
Something
enough to do
fine.
that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think you kind of, the effort that's gone into that, and kind of the way
Yes.
the juggling of kind of managing
Yeah.
that around flares and symptoms and kind
Mm.
of stuff like that has been
Yeah.
really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Wow.
hard. You want to look good, but then
Yep.
sometimes you don't want to look good,
Yeah.
and
Yep. Yep.
it's a tricky space to sit.
Yeah, you've described it
Mhm.
really well, Chris.
One of my
Yeah.
friends used to get, one of my female friends, when we were in our 20s, she used to get quite a lot of redness on her skin, and she bought this makeup from somewhere like Clinique or somewhere, and it was green. So you put on this, like, it was
Oh,
like a green tinted
Yes.
moisturizer,
I
and
remember
she used to
this.
Cancel
put
out.
that
Yes,
on,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So I used to get, I've got quite a red face, so I thought, do you know, it was like probably about 10 years ago, and I thought, I'm going to try this green tinted moisturizer,
Mm.
see if it takes the redness from my face. Oh my God, I looked like I needed to be cremated. I looked so
I turned you a nice shade of grey.
so
Oh
yeah, so
dear.
there's a part of me that sometimes thought, yeah, maybe I should get that green stuff again.
Yeah, that would be a good demonstration of how you
Then people
feel.
will just really,
Yeah,
really understand it. Oh
Oh.
I'll be
goodness.
like, oh.
Oh.
Well,
Chris, we're going
Chris,
to finish with a question that we've been asking everyone who comes onto the
Yeah.
podcast. And we talk about the space, the chronic health space being very noisy, and you know this. A lot of people
Yeah.
have suggestions.
Yeah.
They have is that a nice
Comments
way of putting it?
to make. Yeah.
Yes. So we're interested in what's the strangest, perhaps the most annoying thing that someone has suggested that you do to heal or maybe cure
Yeah.
yourself.
We all
I
have
think
one,
so.
don't we,
Yeah,
Chris?
everyone has
I
one.
know. So
Yep.
I used to talk to this woman sometimes when I went for a walk on the park with my dog when I lived in London, and she was really lovely. But she was quite unfiltered and she was very curious and she would ask loads of questions. She'd like, but sometimes from a kind of viewpoint of, do you think I've got MS as well? Kind of, that
Oh,
one.
oh,
Yes, we know those
Um,
people.
which
Yep.
we
she
do
had,
know
she
those
had,
people.
there were no kind of symptoms that would trigger that thought, but I get it. It's fine. And
Yep.
then, so she was asking me all these questions and I was saying, oh yeah, I feel like someone's kind of like touching my hand or kind of, I didn't use the word ghost or anything. And she just, sort of, apropos of nothing, she just said, have you ever thought about an exorcism? And I was like,
Oh, that
oh
is
my
just
God. There was a little part of me that kind of thought, oh yeah.
That
there's
is
a
so
tiny part of
unexpected.
you.
So
It was
next
quite
level.
Wow,
unexpected. It was
that's
quite, I think she was somebody who went to like a
Oh,
spiritualist church or something. So that
right.
was
right.
where it came from.
Okay,
It came
so
from the back of that. And I
yes,
was
Right.
like, I was kind of bemused. It was quite a difficult one to
Yes.
answer. It was something, when kind of somebody comes out with a strange political view and you're not expecting it and you're kind of a bit
yes,
floored. It
How
was a
do I
bit like
answer
that.
this?
And I was
Yes, how do
like,
I
yeah.
respond? Because I'm sure
oh,
that if
that's
she had have said something like, have you tried fish oil or vitamin D or this new diet,
Yeah, well,
you'd be
that's
used to
right.
that.
Yeah.
But an exorcism,
yeah,
not so
not
much.
the spirit. Yeah, no, no.
Wow. Well, that is not one I have ever heard in all my
No,
time of
I have not.
working with
Yeah,
clients and hearing, yes, my goodness.
don't try this at home, kids.
Yes, do not.
Chris, thank you so, so very much for taking some time out of your very busy life to come and talk to
Thank
us
you.
Yeah.
on the podcast. Before you go, we need to know the name of your book. We didn't
Yes,
ask you.
please.
Yeah, it's called Sick to Death.
Sick to
Sick to
Death.
death.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. By Chris Bridges. So now we
Chris
know
Yeah.
Bridges.
and we can look that
We
up.
will link it to
Yeah.
the podcast, to our notes in our
Yeah, it
social
came
media.
out
And
in
thank
Australia.
you.
I think it came out in July last year in Australia. It was a bit later,
Oh,
but yeah,
All right, but it's here.
fantastic. It's here.
it is.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much,
Chris.
Chris.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
lovely talking to you. I really enjoyed it.